Mike Pence and Kamala Harris face off in the vice presidential debate for the year, and fireworks fly as they go through that. The Trump campaign sets aside a ticket for Tupac because he is Kamala Harris's favorite living rapper. The Milwaukee area erupts in protest over a charging decision on a police officer, so we'll talk a bit about what's been happening over there. And an Orthodox Jew is called a Nazi. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, folks. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. Looks like my image is not popping up over there, which means my webcam decided not to start. Let's figure out why that is. There it goes. Had it turned off from last night's stream. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a bunch of stuff to get to tonight. There was a big debate that went on last night, and I've got some clips to see from that. We'll talk a bit about why Milwaukee is going up in flames at this point. But before we get into any of it, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We carry great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Freckles and Brit Show. We also carry the Generational Gap, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, and the R-Rated Conservative. So head on over there to our website, pick up some of our swag, and help us support great creators. Alright, looking at the stocks to start with, we've got the chart up here, and the Dow had one of the best days that it's had since June. Up 500 points, which means that we're in solid recovery territory coming up at this point. The Dow is actually set to open up in the green, so it's set to open up to pre-pandemic levels, which is going to be excellent to see, because that means that investors think rather that people are going to be going back to work, and that's going to be something incredible to see. We're seeing some stabilization going along with the president. The vice presidential debate, I think, did very, very well in the minds of the investors. So let's have a look at what the investors have to say from this. Let me get the live chat up for you guys. There you go. And let's move on. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones Futures rise, stock market rally stronger than it seems. IBM, Tesla, Taiwan Semiconductor, Regeneron climb, from Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures rose modestly Thursday morning, along with the S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures. The stock market rally rebounded Wednesday on yet another tweet from President Trump. The major indices are at recent highs, while leading stocks are strong. Taiwan Semiconductor stock, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, Etsy, Fastly, and Tesla were pre-market winners. But the big early winner is Dow Jones component IBM. Shares jumped 12% before the open, signaling a breakout from an otherwise uninspiring base. IBM will spin off its managed infrastructure unit to focus more on the hybrid cloud market. IBM also announced preliminary Q3 results in line with views. Morgan Stanley will buy Eaton Vance for $7 billion cash in stock. The new deal comes 2 days after Morgan Stanley closed its E-Trade financial acquisition. Morgan Stanley fell modestly while Eaton Vance spiked 46%. Meanwhile, Domino's Pizza reported mixed Q3 results early Thursday, with earnings falling short by revenue beating. Domino's stock fell solidly before the open, signaling a move back below a buy point. On Wednesday, Fastly stock, Alibaba, Alexion Pharmaceuticals, EPAM Systems, and Ultragenyx broke out or flashed buy signals. Tesla stock rallied Wednesday on yet another Elon Musk leaked email, this time suggesting a new production milestone is in reach. Tesla added to gains overnight on an analyst upgrade and the new street high price target. Apple stock, Microsoft, Amazon have solid sessions on Wednesday, but all are struggling to make much headway. Tesla, Taiwan Semiconductor, and Microsoft stock are on the IBD leaderboard. Apple and Alibaba are on Swing Trader. Microsoft, Domino's, and EPAM stock are on the IBD long-term leaders. Alexion stock, Alibaba, and Microsoft are on the IBD 50. On the futures, Dow Jones Futures rose 0.7% versus fair value, fueled by IBM stock. S&P 500 futures advanced 0.4%, and NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.55%. Remember, pre-market action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So, Seeing a bunch of stuff go up. Domino's is falling because I think people are getting back to work and starting to be able to afford some of the good stuff on pizza. But I'm not sure. Maybe if they are going back to work, maybe they're not going out for pizza anymore. I know Domino's was a big winner through the coronavirus, so we'll see what happens there. Maybe people are getting up on the keto diet. I know it worked fairly well for me. And I broke from it last night for one of the first times in 6 months, but it worked very, very well for me otherwise. So maybe it'll work for some other people. Let's see what the counter has to say over at CNBC. Dow futures rise after the index posts best day since July on stimulus optimism from Pippa Stevens. U.S. stock index futures were modestly higher in Thursday early morning trading after the Dow on Wednesday posted its best day in months, as investors await updates on the ongoing fiscal stimulus discussions. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 106 points or 0.38%. The move implied a higher open of about 100 points. The S&P 500 futures gained 0.4% and NASDAQ 100 futures added 0.6%. Shares of United, American, and Delta Airlines were all up more than 3% in pre-market trading on Thursday. The major averages rose sharply on Wednesday after President Trump tweeted support for aid to airlines and other stimulus measures. So, your tax money is going to go and fund the airlines. Might as well go buy that airline ticket because you're paying for it anyway at this point. Stoking hopes that a smaller aid package could be passed by lawmakers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 530.7 points, or 1.9%, for its best day since July 14th. The S&P 500 advanced 1.74%, while the tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite climbed 1.88%. Wednesday's rally was broad-based, with all 11 S&P 500 sectors finishing higher. With Wednesday's gains, stocks clawed back Tuesday's losses, and then some. Stocks fell late on the day on Tuesday after Trump said that he told his administration to end the coronavirus stimulus talks with Democrats until after the election. Yeah, you just saw a crash on that one. Yeah, no, we're not going to do any more stimulus package. Boom, down. Even though there is uncertainty now about the fiscal stimulus negotiations, regardless of who wins the election, we are likely to have additional fiscal stimulus, said Nancy Davis, founder and portfolio manager at Quadratic Capital. With the uncertainty, I think it's important for investors to have a diversified portfolio with investments that are uncorrelated to each other. We should expect more uncertainty going forward, she added. Yeah, we're not out of the woods yet on this one, especially coming up with the election, and I don't know what tricks that they have sitting up their sleeve to deal with the fact that Trump could win this election. I think they're going to punish him and the American people for it if they should manage to get control of the House and, God forbid, the Senate and President Trump still wins. So we've got a bunch of stuff to sit here and watch. We've got a bunch of stuff to go with on this. So we'll see what happens with it. Honestly, it's a scary thought thinking of what is going to come and go forward in the world. All right, let's do some debate stuff. Starting with Fox News, we've got 5 takeaways from both Fox and CNN, and they are, for the most part, starkly different, but there are a few of them that are on the same page. So let's get back up to the top here. Top 5 vice presidential debate moments between Pence-Harris from Tyler Olson. In the debate that was both contentious but also cooled down by several degrees compared to last week's presidential debate, Vice President Mike Pence and Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Senator Kamala Harris squared off Wednesday night on topics ranging from the pandemic to healthcare to the USMCA. Pence and Harris, one of whom, no matter what, will be the vice president to the oldest president in the United States ever elected by January, meant in what will... Oh, wow! Hold on a second. I feel like... I don't know. Like the connection is choppy in my head here, and I'm... Let me have a drink and see if that corrects things. Pence and Harris, one of whom, no matter what, will be the vice president to the oldest president of the United States ever elected by January, met in what will be their only face-to-face public appearance ahead of the election. Along with their convention speeches, the Wednesday debate will likely be their highest profile moment during the campaign, and that's something to pay attention to, and we talked about this when we streamed the debate last night. One of the things to point out and notice about what we are seeing from this is the fact that nobody knew what happened during the Pence and Tim Kaine debates because I don't think anybody really watched them because nobody cared. At the time, in 2016, there was no expectation that either man would one day become the president. But I think that there is a better than 25% chance that we see and say President Harris sometime in the next 4 years. And honestly, that those odds are kicking up over Trump as well. President Pence could be coming down the road on top of this here because, as the article points out, these are the two oldest presidents that we will ever have. No matter who wins, one of them is going to be the oldest president we've ever had. Period. And that's something to pay attention to as we come forward off of this. These are not spring chickens, and now Biden is obviously on complete cognitive decline, but both of these records do have to be up and seen because there is a real possibility that we could see something like this. All right, here are the top 5 moments of the vice presidential debate as chosen by Fox News. So they might have a little bit of a commercialized right-leaning bias to this. 1. Coronavirus dust-up. Harris opened the debate with aggressive broadsides against the Trump administration's handling of the pandemic, taking her attack on its coronavirus response directly to the head of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country, Harris said. On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic, she continued, and they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. And they knew, and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. No, he didn't. He said that the reaction to it was a hoax. Harris added, this administration has forfeited its right to re-election based on this. Well, the fact that you think that somebody has a right to re-election is probably a big part of the reason that you should not be elected as the vice president of the United States. I'm going to just put that one right out there, right there. Pence responded by arguing that Joe Biden opposed some of the Trump administration's earliest actions about the coronavirus. I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first, Pence said, before mentioning the ban on travel from China that Trump imposed. Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. So yeah, they went back over on that one. Number 2, I'm not taking it. Moderator Susan Page asked Harris whether she would take the vaccine that was approved by the Trump administration before the year is out, because she got back up on the big stage and said, no, if President Trump says to take the vaccine, then I'm not going to take the vaccine, okay? Harris and other Democrats have been accused recently of casting doubt on the effectiveness and reliability of a potential coronavirus vaccine, and polls show that faith in a vaccine may be dwindling. Harris made clear that if a vaccine is vocally supported by medical professionals like the Messiah, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, she would be the first in line to take it. But Harris said, if Donald Trump tells us we should take it, I'm not taking it. Pence responded with incredulity. Yeah, he did a lot of that last night. The fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine is unconscionable, Pence said. I ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The debate over the truth is number 3. A discussion about the economic policy turned to a debate over who's telling the truth to the American people. As Pence was accusing Harris of telling the American people that she would immediately raise their taxes upon assuming office, Harris smiled and said, that's not what I said, while shaking her head. What Harris said was that Biden believes you measure the health and strength of America's economy based on the health and strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing. Well, yes, because they turn around and employ everybody else. But, well, never mind. That's an entire contemporary or ed talk in of itself. Which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for. Well, you know, you and your colleagues over on the House side of things could come together as both chambers and stop fucking spending money. It's that simple. On day one, Joe Biden will repeal the tax bill. He'll get rid of it. Yeah, and Pence was right to hammer on this because that means that your taxes are going up. And Harris tried to pull the same Biden talking point. He's only going to raise the taxes on people who are making $400,000 a year. That is bullshit. Let me rephrase that. If he just flat out gets rid of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act on day one, then yes, your taxes are going to go up. No matter how much you made, your taxes are going to go up. But if he does and proposes out an idea for a clean bill and then the House and Senate can come together and vote on it, then it's possible that he could try to do that, and then people who make over $400,000 a year are just going to weasel their way out of taxes. So then everyone else's taxes are going to go up the next year as we have another massive deficit. So, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. Foreign policy gets personal. Pence and Harris talked about foreign policy in what eventually became personal terms, with Harris assaulting Trump for apparent immorality, hurting the United States on the world stage. What we've seen with Donald Trump is that he's betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world, Harris said. He doesn't understand what it means to be honest. Okay, Harris. Excuse me, by the way. Pence said Trump kept his word when he moved to the U.S. Embassy to Israel in Jerusalem, and emphasized that Trump has overseen significant successes in the fight against ISIS. Pence then attacked Biden over the health of Kayla Mueller, who was abducted by ISIS along with her boyfriend in 2013 after leaving a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Aleppo, which Gary Johnson doesn't know where it is. Mueller's parents blamed the Obama administration for failing to save her life and were Pence's guests at the debate on Wednesday. The reality is, when Joe Biden was vice president, we had the opportunity to save Kayla Mueller, Pence said. The military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was, but when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. I'm so sorry, Harris said to Mueller's parents before going on to attack Trump for his reported comments about military members. This is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in the military as suckers and losers, Harris said. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of fallen heroes and said, "What's in it for them?" Because, of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. President Trump not only respects, but reveres all those who serve in our armed forces, Pence said, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous. So, and the last one here, and CNN actually touched on this one too, the court packing question. Pence and Harris went back and forth over the vacant Supreme Court seat during the debate, with Pence extolling the administration's nominee for the seat, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and Harris emphasizing that there has never been a Supreme Court nominee confirmed this close to a presidential election. Yeah, no, and she did not say whether or not the Biden administration would pack the court. So that's what Fox has to say about all of this here. Let's move on and see what CNN has to say about the same situation. Scroll back up to the top again. We'll just kind of go over because I got clips to go along with a lot of this here. But let's see what they have to say here from Eric Bradner and Kevin Liptak. This was last week's debate on decaf. In the vice presidential debate Wednesday night in Utah, Vice President Mike Pence blew through moderators' efforts to enforce time limits, but was more polite about it than President Trump was last week. Let's just skip into what they took as the takeaways. Number one, Pence's alternate universe. If Pence isn't exactly known for providing forthright answers to questions in interviews and press conferences, his avoidance of answering moderator Susan Page of USA Today's questions on Wednesday seemed to reach new levels of evasion. At moments, he appeared to be debating on a different planet, providing answers to questions he wanted to answer rather than the ones posed. Asked about presidential health, Pence responded about swine flu. Asked about the Supreme Court, Pence responded about top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Asked about protecting the health coverage of those with pre-existing conditions, he attacked Harris over court packing. And I called him on this when we were streaming. I absolutely did, because there was no business in doing all that. the questions were over. He moved on. He was going back and re-answering the questions that had come before because he didn't think that he had enough time to go with them. But if he'd had just stayed on topic, he would have had enough time to do that. You can't just go through and finish off your answer to the question before, and he was doing a lot of that. You got 2 minutes, you agreed to the rules, use the rules that were put forward to you. And we did see a lot of the fact that, I saw the chart and it shows that by the second, Harris, I think, actually had just a touch more talking time than Pence did, but it was being measured in seconds, so it was pretty well even as we went along with that. But yes, absolutely, Pence was doing a lot of stupid shit with that. So Harris plays it safe. Harris opened the night with a swift condemnation of the Trump administration's handling of the coronavirus pandemic, noting that some 210,000 people have died and more than 7.5 million people have contracted the disease. And I still want to see a citation on that because I think it's bullshit. Still, Harris played it safe for much of the night Wednesday, a tactic available to a ticket that polls have shown is leading by double digits nationally and is ahead in every crucial swing state. A source close to the campaign told CNN's Jake Tapper that Harris went into it aware of the various dynamics and to thread the needle on balancing being assertive and letting it go at points. Women are judged differently. It's a needle that we have to thread all the time. And of course, she's been the only woman and the only black woman in many spaces. She wasn't as playing it as safe as CNN tries to put it out there. I don't know if CNN was watching the same debate as me, but no answers on health, transfer of power. For vice presidential candidates running alongside the oldest presidential candidates in history, it seems like a natural and important question. Have you discussed transfer of power in the event that the boss becomes disabled? If their answers were any clue, it doesn't seem so. Neither Pence nor Harris wanted to go there. Instead, each delivered a response unrelated to the issue and ran out the clock. For Pence, the issue is touchy. Trump is both extremely guarded about his health and sensitive to suggestions he's unfit for the job. Over the weekend, when Trump was hospitalized with coronavirus, he grew irritated watching speculation on television about whether he would transfer power to Pence, according to people familiar with the matter. Instead of providing any information about his conversations with Trump on the issue, Pence delivered the entire answer on the 2009 swine flu outbreak, using all of his time. Yeah, there's definitely some stuff going along with that, and something you have to pay attention to, and that's definitely not something that Harris wants to go talk about because she doesn't want the American people to go in and vote for Harris, essentially. She walked away with 1%, less than 1%, a polling number. She didn't even get up to a vote before she dropped out because she was that wildly unpopular with the people. And yet, it's fairly obvious that the plan is to make her the president as soon as Biden gets elected. So, yeah, absolutely, she should be ducking that question. As for Pence, given the fact that the president just got out of the hospital, I think that is a sore subject, but it is something we do need to talk about. So there were a couple things that were going alongside with all of this. Harris ducks Pence's court packing question. Yeah, we already know what happened there. Plexiglass serves as a COVID reminder, and that's the big thing to take away out of this. They set this up to try and put the coronavirus back up into the news because it was falling away again. Nobody cares in this country. In spite of the fact that the president just got it, still nobody cares. My governor is trying to lock the state back down, and interestingly enough, he put the lockdown and he set it to end at November 6th, 3 days after the election. So he will decide whether you voted the right way or not on election day and decide if you were good enough to go back out and participate in your lives. He's been doing them 60 days at a time, but don't think I didn't see that he said November 6th would be the day coming up out of this. Be good and vote the way that I want you to, otherwise you're not going back to work and I will crush your ability to feed your family, is essentially what Evers said to us. And in reality, I don't know if they're doing anything different in any other part of the state. Here in Rock County, we don't care. We absolutely 100% do not care. Most stores you go into at this point don't even try to enforce any mask mandate. So, they put the reminder up to remind you that you need to be afraid. And that's what they want you to do. They want you to be afraid as possible. because you will go in and vote the way that they want you to come election day. All right. So that's what CNN had to say about this. Let me grab one here from The Hill. Trump campaign sets aside debate ticket for Tupac after Harris calls him her favorite living rapper. From Judy Kurtz. President Trump's campaign says it has a ticket for Wednesday night's vice presidential debate, autoplay. I have that playing in my ear, but I don't have your ears on, so you guys didn't get to hear that one. President Trump's campaign says it has a ticket for Wednesday night's vice presidential debate reserved for Tupac Shakur, since Senator Kamala Harris recently referred to him as her favorite rapper alive. We have left a ticket for Tupac Shakur, Trump's senior campaign advisor Jason Miller reportedly told press on a call Wednesday, previewing the debate between Vice President Pence and Harris in Salt Lake City. I am personally more of a Biggie fan, Miller quipped, according to reports, but if Shakur is still alive, we will have a ticket for Tupac. Shakur, who used the stage name Tupac, was killed in 1996 at 25. The move is a dig at Harris, who was asked last month at the NAACP's virtual convention about her favorite still living rapper. After Harris quickly named Tupac, moderator Angela Rye reminded her that the famed rapper was no longer among the living. Harris said with a laugh, "Not alive, I know. I keep doing that." Yeah, you're really in touch with the community that you are put in place to try and reach out to. You are really, really in touch with that. Absolutely. That was entertaining. Let's keep going here from the Daily Wire. Pence to Harris. Democrats will accept 2020 election. They spent years trying to overturn 2016, from Tim Pierce. Vice President Pence suggested that Democrats will not accept the outcome of the 2020 election because they spent the past 3.5 years attempting to negate the results of 2016. Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's vice presidential pick, met on stage in Salt Lake City, Utah, on Wednesday night for the only vice presidential debate of the 2020 campaign. Near the end of the debate, discussion turned to whether each side would accept the results of the election. Pence took the opportunity to slam elected Democrats and the previous administration under former Democratic President Barack Obama for attempting to overturn the 2016 election results. The vice president said that the investigation into Trump's campaign for the alleged Russian collusion and Trump's impeachment were both attempts to force Trump out of office for political reasons. When you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. It's amazing, Pence said. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from Hillary Clinton's campaign. And then we go back on to John Ratcliffe revealing the letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee about the CIA briefing, and we talked a bit about that yesterday. And he's absolutely right on this one. Oh, we got a clip from there, and I don't have that one actually sitting up in here, so let's have a quick listen to that one.
When you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. It's amazing. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call.
And I mean, he is absolutely right on this one. I mean, broken clock. They absolutely did. They've been trying to change the results of 2016. Since 2016. They couldn't accept it. President Trump was not supposed to win. It was supposed to be President Hillary moving us forward into what is eerily the agenda that I never want to see. So, absolutely on that one. All right, let's keep going here. From Fox News, AOC to VP Pence. It's Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez to you. From Dom Colicchio. U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez appeared to be closely watching the vice presidential debate Wednesday night, tweeting several responses to comments by Vice President Mike Pence during his confrontation against Senator Kamala Harris. Particularly irking the New York Democrats seemed to be Pence's reference to her by her widely used nickname, AOC. For the record, Mike Pence, it's Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez to you, Ocasio-Cortez responded on Twitter. Ocasio-Cortez also appeared to be bothered by what she saw as gender dynamics at work during the debate, in which Pence was the only male participant. She accused Pence of demanding answers for questions he posed to Harris while trying to avoid directly answering questions put to him by the debate moderator, Susan Page of USA Today. Why is it that Mike Pence doesn't seem to have an answer to any of the questions asked to him in the debate? She wrote. Pence demanding Harris answer his own personal questions when he won't even answer the moderators is gross. Is exemplary of gender dynamics so many women have to deal with at work. But perhaps the most touchy subject for Ocasio-Cortez, a member of the so-called squad of far-left lawmakers on Capitol Hill, was climate change. During the debate, Pence suggested that the Green New Deal, the signature legislative proposal of people that work above Ocasio-Cortez, was a product of climate alarmists that would be expensive and cost many Americans their jobs. Estimates have placed the deal's price tag at more than $90 trillion. Pence claimed that the Democratic presidential ticket of former Vice President Joe Biden and Harris would fully embrace the plan if elected. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back into the Paris Climate Accord, and they'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush the American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally crush American jobs, Pence said. Ocasio-Cortez responded by claiming the Green New Deal has been lied about nonstop. It's a massive job creation and infrastructure plan to decarbonize and increase quality of life and work, she wrote. Yeah, nobody read what was in it. I read what was in that. I did it in a solo video. You guys can go back and look through my channel and see. This has very, very little to do with climate election and has much, much more to do with redistribution of wealth. It's just packaged up in a clean, tidy little environmental package. And who is going to end air travel at this point? And what do the people of Hawaii have to say about that? I mean, is Mazie Hirono going to get on a... No, she can't even get on a ship at this point because those run on coal too. The whole thing was poorly thought out. They had nothing to go into this, and once again, was just a massive redistributionist attempt. So, oh, here's another one here. Harris quickly shot down Pence's assertion about fracking. The American people know that Joe Biden will not ban fracking, Harris said. That is a fact. That is a fact. Ocasio-Cortez, perhaps mindful of accusations that she was less than enthusiastic for the Biden-Harris ticket after preferring progressive Senator Bernie Sanders for president earlier in the campaign, kept her fracking response limited to a single sentence. Fracking is bad, actually. So, yeah. She has to come up here and make her stunt and get all of her millions of simp followers out there screaming about, yes, yes, slay queen, get on Twitter and slay that evil, evil vice president. But she really has nothing to add to the conversation, and she hasn't added any meaningful legislation. And need I remind you that Vice President hopeful Kamala Harris didn't vote no or yes on the Green New Deal. She voted present. Keep that in mind. Because Schumer brought, McConnell brought that down to the floor for a vote. All right, let's watch some clips. Let's see what actually went on through all of this. I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clips here, about 12 minutes of video. Let's see what actually happened with the debate here. Starting with ABC News. Our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life, and family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system. because they had to drag that one out there too. Let's get the ears back on over there for you guys and have a listen.
In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. Was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this
I'm going to cut that one at that point right there, because, I mean, that is something that didn't come up. It came up in the presidential debate, but it didn't come up from the moderator off this one. Yes, we want to sit back and talk about the justice of Breonna Taylor, but let's not forget the fact that, in spite of the fact that there was no evidence circumspect to indict the officers, and it's possible at this point, if we don't know that Breonna Taylor shot first, that is 100% possible at this point. These businesses in Louisville and Chicago and Minneapolis and Portland and Seattle, they're not coming back, a lot of these places, because the insurance covered just enough for them basically not to lose everything. Hopefully move out of the areas that they were doing. A lot of these businesses are not going to come back. There is a dynamic between what's happening in the justice system, and some of these cases are not justified, absolutely not. But the only ones they seem to be protesting are the ones that did seem to be justified. And the community of people that serve in these areas where they're rioting, looting, and burning. I look back and I saw $1 million, maybe $2 million worth of cars, used cars, burnt to an unusable point. Even the ones that still had paint on them were not usable anymore. Millions of dollars lost. And I walked up and I looked at it right face to face. You saw the stream. Both the non-volume one and the volume one. You saw the stream. I saw businesses boarded up. Places burnt out. Places that are never going to come back. A downtown that's thriving that was boarded up in plywood, in fear that protesters would move on away from the downtown area and move into the more upscale area that's even further downtown. I saw a lot of that. These businesses just want to serve the communities, and they position themselves into lower income communities, still wanting to serve them. And some of these businesses are not coming back. All right. So that's what I had on that one. Let's keep going here. From Now This, Harris on Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. We must always fight for values that we hold dear. We need to reform our policing in America for our criminal justice system.
Death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so, and I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal.
Let's not point out the fact that they were shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, in the middle of a pandemic that is supposedly so dangerous that if we walk 6 inches out of our house, we instantly die.
Justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is...
And Chris pointed this out last night too. He was livid at this particular comment. This is a woman who made a career out of putting black people in jail in San Francisco and in the greater California area as the AG of California and the prosecutor for San Francisco, I believe. I thought she was in LA County, but I think he pointed out that she was up in San Francisco. I would have to fact check that on my own, but she made a career out of putting black people in jail for simple criminal drug possession and then extending their sentences far beyond. Now, she will come out and say, well, I prosecuted the big banks and I prosecuted the evil banks that took advantage of people and kitty diddlers and murders and that. But, I mean, there was more than that. She prosecuted people for just carrying a bag and laughed about smoking weed and listening to Tupac and Snoop Dogg long before either one of them had a career. You don't get a seat at the table on police reform when you were one of the worst offenders to this not that long ago. And I will say that people do have the ability to change, but this is the same party that's reaching back to the 80s and sometimes the 70s to try and find something that somebody said to try and disqualify them from an office. And we saw that with Kavanaugh. Make sure your house is clean before you go and accuse somebody else of something that happened 35 years ago. So, and this was pointed out very clearly. This was one of the first times that she brought up the fact that she was a prosecutor at one point. All right, let's keep going here. I got a few more clips from The Hill. Vice President Pence to Senator Kamala Harris. When you were DA in San Francisco, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics.
I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney General of California, you increased the disproportionate incarceration of blacks in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record speaks for itself. President Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President
We've fought for educational choice and opportunities for African Americans.
Stop talking, Vice President Pence. This is devastating to us trying to appoint Kamala Harris as president.
Americans, all of our
Thank
members,
you, sir.
And we'll do it for 4 more
Thank
years.
you. You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
I appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holds.
Thank you.
Not only,
Thank you, Senator
I
Harris.
would like to go through,
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
but I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes
Then you probably shouldn't have led with stuff that you're actually not going to do coming up here and stuff that completely went against what you did in California. So that's what we have going on with that one. And that, once again, that was right towards the end. And Chris was going nuts on that one as we were watching that last night. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Another one from Now This. The Hill and Now This had a lot of video clips for this. So Kamala Harris stands up for reproductive freedom and the ACA.
the Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections, if they win, for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear.
But wouldn't it be nice if the insurance companies had to sell you insurance instead of being required of you to buy? If they actually had to change their rates because nobody's buying their shitty product? If they had to lower deductibles to try and convince people to buy that? Wouldn't that be a fucking shame? Instead of having carte blanche because the government says that you have to have it. Wouldn't that be nice? And none of this has to do. First and foremost, I do have to point something out to this. Amy Coney Barrett coming up onto the Supreme Court doesn't just get to come up with a gavel and say, okay, there's no more ACA. All right, get in your red robes. There's no more abortion. Get back in the kitchen. She doesn't get to do any of that. That's not how the Supreme Court works. Somebody has to file a lawsuit in the lower court, and it takes years to come up and get that up through the Supreme Court. Now, do I think that they have a lawsuit sitting and waiting in the wings? Possibly. But there has to be a lawsuit. The Supreme Court's a civil court. It's not a criminal court. So they go back, file a lawsuit or an appeal, get it back up to the Supreme Court. And then people have to decide whether or not they're going to hear it. Remember, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Actually, I think Gorsuch said, yes, I'm going to. But Kavanaugh voted no. I don't want to hear an argument on Roe versus Wade. I don't want to hear a case about that. Kick it back to a lower court and go decide it over there. And that's the same with the ACA. Now, should it be overturned? Yes, absolutely. Let the market come back up, get the government out of the way, and before anybody over on Twitter says, well, what do you think of Trump's plan to do this? I don't care. Get the fucking government out of healthcare. They suck at everything. I sure as hell don't want them anywhere near something that's supposedly keeping me alive. So that's what we saw from that. Let's keep going. I got a couple more here, and then we'll actually move on into other news. Here's a look at what it means to pack the Supreme Court after Vice President Mike Pence pressed Senator Kamala Harris on the issue at the VP debate.
You've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864...
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay.
I'm speaking.
In 1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election, and it was 27 days before the election, and a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States, and then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
And once again, first off, she completely sidestepped the question of, are you going to pack the courts or not? But second off, I don't care what Abraham Lincoln did back in the 19th century at this point. What I care about is flip the parties. And once again, absolutely flip the parties off of this, because if this was a Hillary Clinton presidency right now, and we were trying to run some boring-ass neocon up against Hillary Clinton, and Chuck Schumer had the Senate, and this same situation opened up in the same, like I said, this would have been completely different if Hillary had won, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have stepped down the next day and the first woman president gets to appoint my replacement. But apples for apples in this same situation, or let's just say the most conservative member of the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, was in the same situation at this point and died 60 days before the election. And the situation was up where it was 27 days before the election. As I pointed out numerous times, if this was a Hillary presidency and a Schumer Senate, Thomas would have died on Friday, nomination would have been done on Monday, confirmation would have been done by Wednesday. We would already have a new justice sitting on the Supreme Court if the roles were reversed. You know it, and I know it. All right, that's what I had for this one. I got one more here. And that is the stupid-ass fly. Let's have a look at that one.
Is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day. The President
And it just
Trump
sat
and
there.
I
That's the
stand
craziest
with
part of
you.
this.
And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided is a
Let's watch that one more time.
great insult to the is a great insult. Is a great insult. Is a great insult
Hold on. We got to make this
to the
bigger.
men and women who serve in law. Is a great insult.
Boom.
Is a great insult.
Boom.
Is a great insult.
That's hilarious. I don't care who you are. That's funny. All right. Let's go on. So, speaking of debates here, coming up on the next one, Joe Biden suggests he'll skip the next presidential debate if Trump still has COVID-19, demands President prove he's not contagious. From Emily Zanotti. That's over at the Daily Wire. Despite assurances from his campaign over the weekend that he will be present for the next presidential debate, on October 15th, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden said on Wednesday that he could skip the contest if President Trump is still suffering from COVID-19. Well, I think if he still has the COVID, we shouldn't have a debate, Biden told the media during a stop in Maryland. I think we're going to have to follow very strict guidelines. Many people have been infected, and it's very serious, the thing. So I'll be guided by the guidelines at Cleveland Clinic and what the doc says is the right thing to do. And if he shows up for the debate, Biden continued, echoing claims that he made during a Monday night NBC News town hall suggesting that Trump contracted the virus because he's not super serious about following disease prevention protocol. Biden added, I'm looking forward to being able to debate him, but I just hope that all the protocols are followed. What's necessary at the time? At the town hall, Biden was clear. Anybody who contracts the virus by essentially saying masks don't matter, social distancing don't matter, I think is responsible for what happens to him. No compassion whatsoever. And he was somewhat compassionate on all of this, but still just absolutely zero compassion. Now that the Twitter is off and the cameras are coming back on, and now he has to come up and run a campaign again. So we will see, and he just might have found the ticket to get out of the debates and not have to be jacked full of drugs to come up through this. All right, I got another tweet here. That was just an announcement of what I read there. Biden just now to reporters on the tarmac in Delaware on if there should be a second debate. Well, I think if he still has COVID, we shouldn't have a debate. All right, let's keep going here. From Fox News, nervous Schumer spending big in Michigan Senate race to help Gary Peters. Memo from Marissa Schultz. John James, the Michigan GOP candidate, raised $14 million in the third quarter and is within striking distance of upsetting incumbent Senator Gary Peters, according to a Tuesday campaign memo obtained by Fox News. Quick. Get the mail-in ballots in. Make sure that we get enough absentee ballots that we can win no matter what. In a sign of the competitive race, the Super PAC aligned with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is pumping $5.4 million into ad spending in Michigan this week alone to help bolster Peters, the memo authored by James's campaign also revealed. Chuck Schumer's Senate Majority PAC will spend $5.4 million in a week. This is the most money they're spending on any Democrat in the entire nation, James's general consultant, Stu Sandler, wrote in a confidential memo obtained by Fox News. They are very nervous about John James, and they should be. Sandler obtained the Democrats' spending information from James's ad buyers. He said the Senate Majority PAC, which is trying to flip the Senate blue, did not comment on the amount of spending in Michigan this week, but Democrats offered statements expressing confidence that Peters will win with the support from Michigan voters. John James is the handpicked candidate of Mitch McConnell, Betsy DeVos, and the out-of-state billionaires and corporate special interests, Schumer said, while pumping $5.4 million from New York into the race. I just want to point that one out there. Who are trying to buy the Senate seat, he said, as he pumped $5.4 million into this race. Said Stuart Boss, spokesperson for Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Voters are going to reject James next month because they know he's tried to deceive them about his harmful agenda to repeal their health care and can't be trusted to put Michigan families ahead of his party leaders and donors in Washington. He said, while being a donor in Washington. Really? So that is what we're seeing up out of Michigan here. I got one from Axios that came to me from Tweets by Brit over on Twitter, another member of the wonderful Freedom Scoop Media Group. From Axios, Trump calls getting coronavirus a blessing in disguise, from Jacob Knudsen. President Trump said in a new video on Wednesday evening that contracting the coronavirus was a blessing in disguise and claimed, without scientific evidence, that the antibody cocktail from Regeneron Pharmaceuticals he was treated with is a cure. Let me see. Went into the hospital. Feeling like shit. Took the drug cocktail. Left the hospital. Feeling good. What would you call that? The president said he is seeking emergency use authorization for the antibody cocktail, which he received last week while experiencing mild symptoms. He claimed that it was his suggestion to doctors that he be treated with the therapeutic which Regeneron says has only been given to fewer than 10 people outside of clinical trials. I spent 4 days at Walter Reed, Trump said. I went in, and I wasn't feeling so hot, and within a very short period of time, they gave me Regeneron, the best Regeneron, the greatest. It's called Regeneron, and other things too, but I think this was the key. They call it a therapeutic, but to me, it wasn't therapeutic. It just made me better. Okay, I'll call it a cure. The best cure. We have the greatest cure. And me, your favorite president. I don't know. Well, I don't know what you would call it. I would call it a cure. If it worked like that quickly, I would call it a cure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe. But that's how I would see it. From the Hill, Ocasio-Cortez slammed Tulsi Gabbard for amplifying ballot harvesting video. Let me turn your ears off because the Hill has a really, really nasty habit of doing autoplay. See? See? Caught that one ahead of time. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called on Representative Tulsi Gabbard to issue a public apology to Representative Ilhan Omar for promoting a video alleging ballot harvesting after a key source said he was bribed to participate. Tulsi Gabbard, you, along with everyone else who amplified this fraudulent story, owe Representative Omar a public apology, the New York Democrat or Congresswoman tweeted on Tuesday. Thank you, Alex. Lack of integrity from these folks is astonishing, Omar responded. In the original video, released by right-wing media operation, Project Veritas, the brother of newly elected city councilman Jamal Hassan, appeared to claim that he participated in fraudulent harvesting on Omar's behalf. The practice, which involves a third party gathering others' ballots for delivery election to officials, was illegal for more than 3 ballots in Minnesota until September of this year. Yeah, once again, I don't know what happened with this and the legality of it. All I know is that, once again, and I say this all the time, switch the parties and see what the reaction would be. And Tulsi is getting based. Now, she is still a massive socialist and would still vote for many of those things, socialist ideals, socialist everything else. But if she's going to continue to get kicked around by the socialists of her party, she might start seeing the light. Who knows? Maybe Coconut Mommy will come back inland, back to the States, and run in somewhere flyover. Who knows? I know that she's supposedly not running for re-election in her congressional seat, but she's still got a pretty public profile. I wouldn't be surprised to see a cabinet position in a Trump cabinet from her. All right, I got a couple here from my neck of the woods here. From Fox 6, businesses damaged, looted hours after peaceful protests in Wauwatosa. From Cassidy Williams, that's over at Fox 6 out of Milwaukee. Get the live chat back up here. Hundreds of people marched on Wednesday, October 7th, after Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm earlier Wednesday announced suspended officer Joseph Mensah will not face charges in February fatal shooting of Alvin Cole, 17, outside of Mayfair Mall. What started as a peaceful protest throughout the day ended with chaos, leaving several businesses damaged. You don't say. Weird. It's like that happens all the time around here. Cassidy Williams says a lot of broken windows near North Avenue and Swan Boulevard in Wauwatosa. Wauwatosa police said gas was deployed by law enforcement Wednesday night, October 7th, after an unlawful assembly was declared near North Avenue and Swan Boulevard. More gas was deployed shortly before 11 p.m. near 102nd Street and Melvina Avenue, police said, in an effort to disperse the crowd. Police said individuals were throwing large rocks at law enforcement and buildings near North and Swan, advising residents to shelter in their homes. Protesters marched in a mostly peaceful manner Wednesday, first making their way onto the freeway, because that's what they always do, before reaching Wauwatosa, some carrying signs chanting Black Lives Matter and No Justice, No Peace, because they only have 2 chants, among other messages. Shortly after 8:30 p.m. outside Wauwatosa City Hall, protesters were met by police, deputies, and National Guard members in riot gear where the protest was deemed an unlawful assembly. Wauwatosa resident volunteers headed outside with gloves, brooms, dustpans, and masks on Thursday morning, October 8th, to help local businesses heal beginning at 6 a.m. Wauwatosa residents will gather near Collectivo Coffee at the intersection of North and Swan and work to sweep up the window glass broke during the unrest Wednesday evening. Let's Heal Wauwatosa is being organized by Sean Rowland, Robin Vining, So that's what happened with the protests. Let's see what led into the protests. From the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Milwaukee County District Attorney will not charge police officer Joseph Mensah in shooting death of Alvin Cole. More than 8 months after the shooting death of 17-year-old Alvin Cole in February, the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office said Wednesday that it would not charge Wauwatosa police officer Joseph Mensah. Earlier in the day, a separate report by third-party investigator Stephen Biskupik recommended the Wauwatosa Police and Fire Commission fire Mensah. In this case, there is sufficient evidence that Officer Mensah had an actual subjective belief that the deadly force was necessary, and that belief was objectively reasonable. District Attorney John Chisholm wrote of his decision, "I do not believe that the state could disprove self-defense or defense of others in this case, and therefore could not meet the burden required to charge Officer Mensah." After meeting with Chisholm, the Cole family voiced concerns about his ruling. Talivia Cole, Alvin's sister, said Chisholm showed his bias. "All these black families walking here to meet with you about their loved one that has been killed by Joseph Mensah, and you have yet to not justify it," she said. "The fight doesn't end here. We've got to make sure Joseph is fired immediately." Kimberly Motley, an attorney for the Cole family, said Mensah and the officers who were present during Cole's death did not sit down with Chisholm or Biskupik. "Law enforcement, they routinely expect us as community members to sit with them, which we do, to answer these questions, which we do," she said. "The fact that Officer Mensah did not do that speaks volumes." So it looks like, and I haven't been following the story very closely, I will admit off of this, because with the election going on, I've been paying more attention to what's been going on nationally. There was a shooting. It was outside of the Mayfair Mall. The Wauwatosa City Police and the Milwaukee County Courts determined that it was, in fact, a justified shooting. So I don't know where to go with this. Something else I will have to take some time and look into. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel wants my money, so I have to go and create an account with them, but I'm not going to do that as well. But the Milwaukee area is definitely burning up right now, and we'll probably see more of this going up into the weekend. All right, from the Associated Press. Ex-officer charged in George Floyd's death freed on $1 million bond. The former Minneapolis police officer charged with murder in the death of George Floyd posted bail Wednesday and was released from jail, leading Minnesota's governor to activate the National Guard to help keep the peace in the event of protests. According to court documents, Derek Chauvin posted a $1 million bond and was released from the state's facility in Oak Park Heights, where he had been detained. Hennepin County jail records show that he was released shortly before 11:30 a.m. Floyd, a black man in handcuffs, died May 25th after Chauvin, who was white, pressed his knee against Floyd's neck for several minutes, as Floyd said that he couldn't breathe. Floyd's death was first captured in a widely seen bystander video that set off protests around the world. Chauvin and 3 other officers were fired. Chauvin is charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter. Thomas Lane, Jay Quing, and Tao Thao are charged with aiding and abetting both second-degree murder and manslaughter. Upon news of Chauvin's release, Governor Tim Walz activated the National Guard and helping local law enforcement. Walz said the Guard was mobilizing 100 soldiers and providing equipment and facilities out of an abundance of caution. In light of public safety concerns, Walz said that 100 state troopers and 75 Department of Natural Resources conservation officers were also mobilized to help local authorities. As darkness fell Wednesday evening, hundreds of people took to the streets in South Minneapolis, where protests were centered in the days after George Floyd's death. They marched several blocks and blocked an intersection for a time, with chants including "No justice, no peace, prosecute the police." Floyd family attorneys Ben Crump, who is on every one of these major cases, by the way, and Antonio Romanucci, released a statement saying Chauvin's release is a painful reminder that the family is far from getting justice. The system of due process worked for Chauvin and afforded him his freedoms. While he awaits trial, in contrast, George Floyd was denied due process when his life was ended. Over a $20 bill, there was no charge, no arrest, no hearing, no bail, just execution, the attorneys wrote. And once again, they're going to completely gloss over the fact that he was on enough fentanyl to kill a horse, but I mean, I've seen the meme where it's women with a time machine going back and saying, "Oh, 2020 woman, I'm your grandma," and a man with a time machine going back and telling Chauvin not to kneel on the neck and just let the dude die in the back of the police car, which it's very likely at this point that he would have done. That being said, honestly, if I was Chauvin, I would probably have just stayed in and wait for my trial at this point. Because you can't leave. That's something to keep in mind with this. You can't leave. But you're out on bail. And if you leave the area, you leave the state or anything else like that, you're going to be suddenly another felon for bail jumping. And now you're sitting there with a bunch of people who want you dead for something that you didn't even really do. I mean, yes, there was criminal negligence there. There should be a manslaughter charge to go with this. But if you're out and away from the protection of the state, that's one of the few purposes that jail is going to serve in this situation, is that he was protected from the rioters and the protesters out there that want to see his head on a silver platter. And once again, I don't know that if I was in that same situation, I would have accepted the bail. I don't know where he drummed up the bail money from, but I would not have accepted. I would have said, no, keep me in. Let me finish out my trial and keep me in. And if I get acquitted, then I can leave the state. And if I don't, then I'm in prison, which is probably going to be just as bad for him, but definitely a few things we're going to watch. All right, let's keep going here. From CNN, members of Orthodox Jewish community protest for a second night in Brooklyn over new COVID-19 restrictions. From Christina Squeglia and Eric Levinson. Sorry, I can't pronounce that name. Members of New York City's Orthodox Jewish community protested for a second night in Borough Park, Brooklyn on Wednesday in response to strict new coronavirus-related restrictions. The area of Brooklyn is one of several places in New York where officials closed schools and limited houses of worship to a maximum of 10 people. Governor Andrew Cuomo instituted these measures to try and stop hotspot clusters in New York, Queens, and several New York City suburbs from spreading further into New York City. But these restrictions were put in place just days before major Jewish holidays and have exacerbated existing tensions between the insular Orthodox Jewish communities and city leaders. Many of Wednesday's protesters were not seen wearing masks, and most were not social distancing. A reporter for the Jewish Insider said that in a series of tweets that he had been brutally assaulted by a crowd during a Wednesday protest. Reporter Jacob Kornbluh tweeted that he was hit in the head and kicked by members of the crowd. In a tweet, he thanked heroic police officers for saving him. The fire department of New York City told CNN that they responded to 13th Avenue and 45th Street for a possible injury at 10:11 p.m., but that the incident was deemed a police matter and no injuries were reported. The New York Police Department wasn't able to immediately comment on the incident or gathering. Representative Jerry Nadler retweeted Kornbluh's account of the alleged attack, describing it as terrifying news. While this may be a small minority within a small community, it's disgusting and those responsible must be held to account for such violence. So, yeah, I mean, Cuomo and de Blasio are being incredibly anti-Semitic. The Hasidic Jews are protesting along with the Orthodox Jews, and one person got hurt. Going on here from the New York Post, Jewish reporter says he was attacked, called a Nazi, at Orthodox protest in New York City. From Vincent Barone, an Orthodox reporter said he was attacked by an angry mob at a protest in Borough Park, Brooklyn, against coronavirus restrictions on Wednesday night. The reporter, Jacob Kornbluh, said protesters yelled that he was a Nazi and Hitler as they chased after him during a second night of unrest over government attempts to stop the surging cases of COVID-19 across a broad swath of Brooklyn. Kornbluh blamed the attack on Heshi Tischler, an agitator and aspiring politician, who has organized the largely Orthodox protests over the last 2 nights. I was brutally assaulted, hit in the head, and kicked by an angry crowd of hundreds of community members in the Borough Park protest, while yelling at me Nazi and Hitler after Heshi Tischler recognized me and ordered the crowd to chase me down the street, Kornbluh tweeted. Tischler, who was running for city council, was filmed pinning Kornbluh against the wall as he shouted, "You're a Moser," or snitch. Kornbluh said that he was saved by police and several community members. The night before, Tischler was filmed referring to Mayor Bill de Blasio's wife, Chirlane McCray, as a retarded woman. Interesting. So, yes, Orthodox Jewish guy is definitely the biggest Nazi in the world. Definitely something to see there. All right, I got just a couple more, then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and we'll head on out of here. From Fox News, Democrats resign that Amy Coney Barrett confirmation is inevitable. We can't stop the outcome. From Marissa Schultz. As much as Democrats detest the confirmation process of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, panning the election year as illegitimate, dangerous, and rife with hypocrisy, they've acknowledged that there's little they can do to stop her lifelong ascension to the Supreme Court. With Republicans holding the Senate majority and seemingly having the votes to confirm Barrett, Democrats say they don't have a silver bullet to stop the fast-track confirmation schedule that will kick off Monday. Good, because you would have done the same fucking thing. There's no procedural move that I'm aware of that allows the minority to slow this process down at all, said Senator Chris Coons. And trust me, I've asked a lot. That's one of the things that I think the general public doesn't quite appreciate, that as long as the GOP majority is willing to change the rules, like they did, and is willing to insist on moving ahead when it is demonstrably unsafe, unwise, and unprecedented to do so, there's nothing the Democratic minority can do to stop them. Because they ended the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations. Republicans hold a 53 Senate majority. In the Senate, only 2 GOP senators, Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins, have rejected pushing through the Barrett nomination just days before the presidential election. 4 years ago, Republicans blocked President Obama's nominee of Merrick Garland on the grounds his March 2016 nomination was too close to the November election, when the American public would have a say. And it was a bullshit lie because they just wanted to win, is essentially what it came down to. They had the ability to stop it, and they wanted to win. Just like now, they've got the ability to push it through, and they want to win. That's all that it is. So, yeah, that's going to go through. We're going to see the end of that coming up pretty quick. All right, one more here. From Representative Katie Hill. Enough is enough. In order to advance the #MeToo movement, we must be willing to acknowledge the problematic behaviors among those in our own communities. Only then will we see true progress. #Time's up, #MeToo. This is responding to a thread that she went through on October 6th. But in reality, Katie Hill came out, banged the help, and then tried to blame her husband for the fact that she was being pushed out of Congress by Nancy Pelosi. You're not allowed to plow the help when you're in Congress. I think a lot of that came in from the disdain that came from Clinton over the fact that he was plowing the fucking help. But she's going to come up here and continue to perpetually try and play the victim until the end of time. So, that's Katie Hill. All right, let's do a thing that I hate, a thing that I like rather, a thing that I hate, and get the hell on out of here. All right, thing that I like today, which usually revolves onto what I'm watching over on Netflix. So, usually when I'm binging, I have 2 series that I watch. One that I actually pay attention to, like when I'm laying in bed and not really doing anything, just I'm actually paying attention to what's going on, which is The Man in the High Castle. We've talked about that a couple times. And then I'll have one that I put on as background noise, but something I still enjoy to work on or to use while I'm working on other stuff, while I'm doing video editing, while I'm doing research, while I'm setting up the video scenes for the Red Ned show, while I'm doing all of that. I have something else that I'll usually keep on for background noise. And this past week, I started down Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which I love. I've watched it all the way through once before. It is the best Trek, and that is in spite of the fact that they don't actually trek anywhere, that they just stay in one place. If you haven't seen Deep Space Nine, it is heavily influenced in politics, and the politics of expansion and imperialism. A state that just ended an occupation, or a planet that just ended an occupation, is on the fence as to whether or not they want to join the United Federation of Planets or go back on to going their own way. The occupying force is still looking rife with trying to pick the occupied planet back up. And in the middle of the first episode, a wormhole is discovered that brings trade routes into a far reach of the galaxy, which means that this planet is now in control of one of the biggest trade routes in the galaxy. there's a lot of politics. There's a war that comes up into the later seasons, but it's just, for the most part, it is playing the politics, the religion, and they covered a lot of the big stories that were happening in the 90s when this was taking place. I just watched an episode where they were talking about the separation of religion and school. It's really something to go and check out. I recommend it highly. Even if you're not really into sci-fi, there's a lot of political allegories that you can place even to today. So go over there and check that out. It is on Amazon Prime for free and over on Netflix. I think it's on Hulu too, but I'm not sure. But definitely, if you have the chance, go and check that out. And now let's do a thing that I hate. Jennifer Rubin, who regularly pops up in this segment. Nurse at my MD office with school-age kids. She and husband have to trade days off from work, but their remote learning is nowhere near sufficient. This is why Trump is going to lose and lose big. He has screwed up people's lives even if they aren't sick. So Rubin is actually sitting here discussing the fact that the nurse in the office that she's going to go and have her doctor visit for is trading days off with her husband because the school is shut down in New York. Now, the schools are not shut down in most places in Wisconsin. There are a couple places in inner city Milwaukee and inner city Madison where they shut them down and the kids have to stay home. But for the most part, they are not shut down here. And I got called a hypocrite for saying that off of this. And I was told, of course, that the schools are going to be shutting down in my state because we're stupid and we're free or whatever the fuck the dude was trying to say. But the reality is this is not a nationwide thing. And if Trump came in and shut down the schools himself, Rubin would be calling him a tyrant and saying that he was the worst thing to ever do. And these kids, if Trump was the one doing this, then they would rightfully be calling him a tyrant. But Rubin has never left New York, as far as I know. She doesn't know what's going on in the rest of the country. And yes, that is a Cuomo decision, I believe, to keep the school shut down, not a Trump decision. So I fail to see why this is a Trump thing if schools in South Dakota and Wisconsin and Wyoming and various other places around the country can come open, but New York City schools have to shut down. And to be fair, I don't mind New York schools being shut down. I really don't. Because that was one of the worst places hit. So if they want to take a little bit of extra precaution coming up before they go in, that's their prerogative. And if you don't like it, move. There's plenty of other country out there for New York, but when Cuomo is the one that made the decision, and Cuomo keeps trying to pin this on Trump, but when Cuomo was the one trying to that made the decision, you don't get to come out and blame the president for it. And that's going to be it for the day. We will be back here later on tonight for some more video game time. I think this is going to be it. I think we're finally going to finish New Vegas, and then we'll sit here and start to discuss what we'll be playing next. So, hope you can join me here later on tonight. That is going to be at 8 Central Time tonight for more New Vegas. Otherwise, we will be back here tomorrow with more Contemporary, and we will read the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat, even if they were abrasive and toxic. Until then, though, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.